Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Little down, coming here again with you, renegade politics, redder than night is day. Thought we were on the same side with a fist full of nails.
Here you go. Dan kicks things off nicely. Your presenter at 10 a.m. is now becoming dangerously obsessed with Donald Trump. He should be removed as it's getting ridiculous now. The problem, of course, with Twitter is you never know how far into one's cheek one's tongue might be inserted. But the man has a point. I am becoming obsessed with the fear that what we're seeing is really, really ugly. And I don't know whether or not these sort of things add to the notion that people like me should be prevented from sharing their thoughts or reporting facts, or whether or not it explains why people like Dan think people like me should shut up. This happened in America.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory! No one will honor us for losing gracefully. No one mourns the great crimes committed against us. For us, it is conquer or die. The mainstream media, or perhaps we should refer to them in the original German, Lügenpresse. It's not just that they are leftist and cucks. It's not just that many are genuinely stupid. Indeed, one wonders if these people are people at all. Or instead soulless golem, animated by some dark power to repeat whatever talking point John Oliver stated the night before. To be white is to be a striver, a crusader, an explorer, and a conqueror. We build, we produce, we go upward. And we recognize the central lie of American race relations. We don't exploit other groups. We don't gain anything from their presence. They need us and not the other way around. Within the very blood in our veins as children of the sun lies the potential for greatness. That is the great struggle we are called to. We are not meant to live in shame and weakness and disgrace. We were not meant to beg for moral validation from some of the most despicable creatures to ever populate the planet. We were meant to overcome all of it, because that is natural and normal for us. The press has clearly decided to double down and wage war against the legitimacy of Trump and the continued existence of white America. But they are really opening up the door for us. America was, until this past generation, a white country designed for ourselves and our posterity. It is our creation. It is our inheritance. And it belongs to us.
Six minutes after 10, once again I find myself reflecting wryly upon the strange fact that supporters of a so-called master race ideology ordinarily prove to be the worst possible advertisements for the existence of any form of master race. But that happened in America. It happened in the last few days, and it happened at a rally address to the voice you heard. He has been praised quite lavishly on the website that is run by Donald Trump's chief of staff. Do you know what question I'd like to ask you this morning? I'd like to say, if you quite like the cut of Donald Trump's jib, if you see sort of, reasons to be cheerful, listen to that and tell me why you're not worried. Why are you not worried by that? This guy isn't just some sort of crackpot that's popped up out of nowhere. He claims that he invented the very term alt-right, which is a synonym for neo-Nazism. Let's not kid ourselves anymore. He invented the term alt-right, he claims, this guy Richard Spencer, and he has said repeatedly, in fact, that people wearing Donald Trump baseball caps might as well be wearing swastikas. So I still, I'm afraid, can't go all the way down the road of thinking that everybody who voted for Donald Trump in any way endorses or supports this sort of ideology, but they were prepared to hold their nose and go along with it for reasons that remain somewhat opaque. I can't quite understand how you could hear this and not feel a chill. If you could phone me and tell me, 0345 6060973 is the number you need. I sometimes say when we're about to start conversations like this that we won't have a fight, or that we won't have a scrap, or that we'll keep things friendly. I'm as much a fan of heated debate as the next man, but I'm beginning to worry slightly that we spend too much time trying to understand stuff, trying to sort of get inside the minds of other people in the hope of providing, I don't know, little keys, little clues to unwrapping it. But that guy there just basically went on to describe how awful it is being white in America and how they need to rise up and regain control of a country that I can't quite see as anything other than run by white people for generations, one black president. Apart from that, where does this thing come from? You try and get into the question of what that's like, and you just can't. I think it is. Are you born with it? Do you think? It could be a genetic explanation. Maybe it's evolutionary. I only really like people who are the same colour as me. I honestly see you, and I see your skin colour, and it makes me think of you as being alien to me, different. Listen to that again, and listen particularly to the bit about the media, the bit about journalists, because I can tell you now that, and again, I don't know how representative Twitter trolls on an LBC feed are, but there are plenty of people in this country who would also rather that journalists who insist on telling the truth and reporting facts are somehow silenced. And the best way you silence them, it was in the 19th century, actually, that German phrase about the lying press was coined. It was used originally by so-called sort of intellectuals to describe, in a quasi-Corbynite way, the notion of a corporate media that was only really representing the interests of corporatism. But it evolved, as soon as the Nazis started their march, into an attempt to essentially silence any criticism, silence any reporting of facts. And some of the facts that are emerging already, I can't lie to you. I just don't understand how people can't be more concerned than they are. I know loads of people are very concerned, but refusing to put his business interests into a blind trust. Reports that he has, during the course of the presidential campaign, after declaring his nomination, he opened 8 businesses or registered 8 businesses in Saudi Arabia as a precursor to building more towers there. Reports which are denied, I stress that because I'm a proper journalist, they're denied, these reports, by both sides. But a prominent Argentinian journalist has claimed that when he rang Donald Trump, when the Argentinian president rang Donald Trump for a sort of congratulatory chit-chat, Donald Trump drew his attention to some issues with regards to a Trump's tower being built in Buenos Aires. They're denied, but a serious journalist has made the point. And of course, when it comes to political denials, they would say that, wouldn't they? This guy who made that Nazi speech, he has been roundly praised by the website that is run by the president-elect's chief of strategy. Now, are we reaching a point where you either say that's okay or you go the other way? I didn't think it was going to happen quite so quickly. I really didn't. I suggested to you some time ago that the next stage will be people will stop complaining about being called racist. You know, we've had years now of oh, you can't say what you want in this country without being called a racist. Well, most people have been able to, except racists. And next it'll be, actually, yeah, all right, I am a racist, so what? And it's happening already in America. It happens here, everything happens here more slowly and, dare I say, rather more politely, but it could still potentially be just as insidious. This is Nazism. This is white supremacism. This isn't, provocative newspaper articles or online blogs trying to get a reaction and chase down clicks. This is people who honestly believe that the colour of their flesh is indicative of some sort of intrinsic worth, some sort of intrinsic value. And I don't know how you have this debate if you continue pretending that things might be all right on the other side of the fence. Does Donald Trump buy into all this stuff? I don't know. Shoot me down. I still don't think he does, actually. I think it's incredibly useful for him. I think he's got one interest, and one interest only, and that is Donald Trump. And I think the stuff with the business that, again, we're not talking about today. We're talking about his tweet, his overnight tweet, that Nigel Farage should be the ambassador to Britain. I'm sure Mr. Farage is furious about a foreign leader interfering in British governmental business this way, subverting sovereignty and undermining our own Prime Minister's right to make her own decisions. I'm sure he's absolutely spitting nails today that a foreign president, a foreign politician should seek to interfere in domestic politics in any way, shape or form. I tell you, off the top of your head, think of any leaders from history who you think might quite like to have chosen their own ambassadors coming to their own country, given that the role of an ambassador historically is to call out corruption, to call out wrongness in a host nation. That is one of the crucial roles of Her Majesty's ambassadors. Donald Trump wants a man who wouldn't call out anything in the chair. And it's hardly surprising, isn't it? But let's listen to this again. It's not Donald Trump speaking, but it's a room full of people who think that Donald Trump's election has given them victory.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory! No one will honor us for losing gracefully. No one mourns the great crimes committed against us. For us, it is conquer or die. The mainstream media, or perhaps we should refer to them in the original German, Lügenpresse. It's not just that they are leftist and cucks. It's not just that many are genuinely stupid. Indeed, one wonders if these people are people at all. Or instead soulless Gollum, animated by some dark power to repeat whatever talking point John Oliver stated the night before. To be white is to be a striver, a crusader, an explorer, and a conqueror. We build, we produce, we go upward. And we recognize the central lie of American race relations. We don't exploit other groups. We don't gain anything from their presence. They need us and not the other way around.
When you reduce it to skin tone, James, you lose all credibility. It's about culture. The man's talking about white people. And when he uses the phrase Gollum, he is indulging in one of the most deeply established anti-Semitic tropes. When he says, are they really people? CNN, the news broadcast network, responds by actually examining the question. Are Jews people? Are Jews really people? You can see on my Twitter feed the screen grab.
Rebecca, I want to ask you, because groups such as the Anti-Defamation League, they've been denouncing the hiring of Steve Bannon because of course, his ties to the alt-right. Some members of that group, they're unabashed white supremacists, racists, anti-Semites. I mean, they stick by those views. Richard Spencer, he's the man who actually coined that term alt-right. He was in Washington this weekend. He was spewing, as he often does, I mean, what I can only describe as hate-filled garbage of Jews, Spencer said, and we'll put this quote up on screen. One wonders if these people are people at all, or instead soulless Gollum. That is an alt-right leader, Richard Spencer, talking about Jews. Does President-elect Trump need to formally denounce and disavow these groups as a whole?
I'm sure the debate was conducted in a slightly more civilized fashion, but that is where we're being led. And I don't quite understand, genuinely, why 90% of the world isn't up in arms. Why is it just 50% or 48%? Why? How can anybody hear that and know that the strategy chief, the chief of strategy in the White House, thinks this guy's a bit of a legend?
David Korn, MSNBC political analyst. He joins me now. David, thank you so much. Of course, Bureau Chief Mother Jones as well. David, so this 60 Minutes interview, do you better understand Donald Trump?
I think we had a very good understanding of Donald Trump before he was elected president. We've been watching him and watching what he's been saying in terms of some hateful bullying remarks. The Access Hollywood tape showed us Donald Trump. We don't need a staged interview in 60 Minutes, with all my respect to Leslie Stahl, to learn much more about Donald Trump. And I think what we saw with the Steve Bannon pick tells you much more than anything he said last night while sitting in that grand room. I mean, people have been pussyfooting around this a bit in the coverage since yesterday. Steve Bannon is an ally of white nationalists. How do we know this? Because Steve Bannon said to one of our reporters at Mother Jones, but elsewhere as well, that he wanted Breitbart, the news service he led, to be a platform for the alt-right. What is the alt-right? A far-right conservative movement that does believe in white nationalism or white supremacism. How do we know that? You go to Breitbart and they say the lead ideological figure of the alt-right movement is Richard Spencer, and he quite clearly says he wants non-whites to leave America, and he wants America to be a white state, and that race is what's most important.
So, David, if this represents Steve Bannon, why aren't we hearing from more moderate Republicans? I asked Kelly O'Donnell about what she's hearing on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
Yes, they're not there, but that doesn't mean you can't communicate. People pop up on cable news every day.
Well, I think they're chicken. I think they're chicken, and I think honest reporting has to point out who Stephen Bannon is, and not just say he's made incendiary remarks or he's controversial. He is allied with racists. He may not be a racist himself. I don't know the man. Reince Priebus says he's a wonderful fellow. Well, I think we can all put that aside, because I'm sure there are a lot of racists and misogynists out there and bigots who are very nice when they're dealing with people at the workplace or their colleagues, particularly on a political campaign. I mean, this is, I think, a really serious moment, which is why you see the ADL and the SLPC and other groups that monitor hate crimes pulling out their hair that a president-elect is putting into the White House a fellow who's in league with people who want to turn America all white. This is not a conspiracy theory, and, you know, later in the day I'll be putting a piece up on Mother Jones spelling this out. You know, it's all out there to see for those who want to see.
0345 6060973. When do we move towards an actual honest admission that, yeah, okay, it's white supremacists versus everybody else? And do I think Donald Trump is a white supremacist? No, not yet. Oddly, and I apologise if that seems naive, I am a bit naive, or at least idealistic, optimistic. Why don't I think he's a white supremacist? Because I just think this is the distraction that history always provides to people who want to fill their own pockets. You give the population something to growl at, you know, whether it's Vladimir Putin annexing illegally parts of the world he's not allowed to annex unless, of course, the rest of the world lets him. And it just destroys and distracts attention back at home from the economic problems that his own people face and from the massive programme of enrichment that his own cronies have been embarked upon. Donald Trump is going to carry on running his businesses, including in Saudi Arabia, while people like that whip up hatred and marshal ancient forces and use anti-Semitic tropes like the Golem. The Golem, and you will correct me on this if I get it wrong, it's a Hebrew word. It's Jewish folklore, in fact, that sees inanimate clay or something turned into a living creature. That's what he means when he's talking about, are they really people? And he calls for an apology when theatre-goers boo his mate at the theatre. That's when he calls for an apology.
Well, the president-elect of the United States of America is in a Twitter fight with the cast of the Broadway musical Hamilton. Why, you ask? It all started Friday night when Vice President-elect Mike Pence went on to see the show.
You know, we had a guest in the audience this evening. And Vice President-elect Pence, I see you walking out, but I hope you will hear us just a few more moments. There's nothing to move here, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing to move here. We're all here sharing a story of love. We have a message for you, sir. We hope that you will hear us out. And I encourage everybody to pull out your phones and tweet and post, because this message needs to be spread far and wide, okay? Vice President-elect Pence, we welcome you, and we truly thank you for joining us here at Hamilton, an American Musical. We really do. We, sir, We are the diverse America who are alarmed and anxious that your new administration will not protect us, our planet, our children, our parents, or defend us and uphold our inalienable rights, sir. But we truly hope that this show has inspired you to uphold our American values and to work on behalf of all of us. All of us. This wonderful American story told by a diverse group of men and women of different colors, creeds, and orientations.
President-elect Trump, he saw things very differently. He took the time from his busy schedule to tweet, "Our wonderful future VP Mike Pence was harassed last night at the theater by the cast of Hamilton. Cameras blazing. This should not happen." Several minutes later, he fired off another tweet that said, "The theater must always be a safe and special place." The cast of Hamilton was very rude last night to a very good man, Mike Pence. Apologize.
When Mike Pence, the vice presidential candidate-elect, gets booed at the theatre, we need an apology for that. Here's a guy your chief of staff thinks is a bit of a dude. Effectively, Sieg Heiling. Any apologies coming for that? Oh, I deplore all racism. Yeah, of course you do. Call out people by name, do you think? Actually tweet about it? Or just too busy worrying about your mate getting booed at the theatre? And I don't know much about Mike Pence, except he thinks you can be electrocuted out of gayness. I would quite like to have a go at electrocuting him into it, but I don't think that these sort of people who believe in conversion therapies accept that that road, if it exists, must be two-way traffic. But to his credit, apparently he turned to his family when the booing started and said, "This is what freedom sounds like." His boss, putative boss, Donald Trump, thinks you should be apologising for freedom. 0345 60 60973. And don't forget, if you don't read right-wing columnists and you don't go onto these websites, what you just heard, that little small but very, very potent resurgence of white supremacism and Nazism, that is the fault of people like me, okay? This is the message you get from your right-wing columnists. If you are worried that we're seeing a far-right politics of a kind that America has never seen and Britain has only ever flirted with, if you're worried about that, then, and you say that you're worried about it, then you're responsible for creating it. That's the other beautiful symmetry of our post-truth world, where somebody like me who says, "Come on, that sounds fascist, doesn't it? Surely we can agree that employing Nazi propaganda tropes like the lying press one, and even doing that sort of funny little smile about let's use the original German, I'm so clever," how they laughed. Surely this is the point at which people go, all right, I quite like the cut of his jib. I thought he was going to reopen coal mines. And anyway, he's great on the telly, so I thought he'd be able to shake things up a bit. But I didn't realise he actually had people like that rooting for him. And it is probably becoming rather boring for you to hear me saying, "I just don't get it." I do get it. I just don't want to get it. I've got it, but I don't want it. I want to give it back. Because when you look for the explanation of how anybody can forgive that, the sex assault allegations, the outstanding lawsuits, the $25 million fraud settlement that he's pulled out of the bag. And yeah, I know Hillary Clinton used an email server that she shouldn't have used. But I could go on. You've got the ex-wife who went on the record accusing him of rape. All of these things that during the presidential campaign we sat here and went, surely this is a breaking point, if you will. And you sit there and you stare at the story and you think, why hasn't that broken? Why is this not a breaking point? And then you play out the white supremacism. And people still are on side. So all you're left with, and it's a grim conclusion, this is why I say I get it, but I don't want it, is that quite a lot of people quite like that, even if they haven't really yet found the voice to stand up and say it out loud. Yeah, actually, white people have been getting a really hard time in the West for years, and it's time someone stood up and recognised our innate superiority. Really? And if you think I'm talking absolute claptrap, then give me a better explanation as to how a man can be in the White House with the ear of a president who thinks that the guy I just played you is cool. 0345 6060973. Louise is in Fulham. Louise, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. I think you're right. You've raised a lot of important issues, and we are in really worrying times. And it seems that what you've just identified, which is people saying we're sick of this liberalism, this being PC, ties in very clearly with also wanting to break rules and saying that it's cool to break rules. And this isn't something that's just limited to America. So you mentioned the fact that the new president has broken rules. We've all been looking at how he's tweeted that he'd like Nigel Farage to be the new UK ambassador to the US. I mean, everybody knows that the way the system works is that the UK appoints its ambassadors to other countries. And, you know, we have a fast-track service, but it's not that fast. And the same thing is happening on the other side of the Atlantic here. We've got a government who's saying that to trigger something as important as Article 50, they're just going to bypass Parliament. We've got judges pointing out that that's not actually the way the Constitution and our law works. We've got people criticising the judges for saying that's not how it works. Meanwhile, you've got David Davis in Brussels today and minister after minister going over to Brussels and saying we want to be able to negotiate a framework deal before we even trigger Article 50, and people in Brussels having to point out that that's not how EU law works. And it just strikes me that we're meant to be, Britain and America are meant to be a role model for successful Western democracies. And right now, we're losing a hell of a lot of credibility.
But we want to. I mean, in democratic terms, we have chosen to do what you describe as a hell of a lot of credibility, to lose it. We've chosen to. It's a democratic decision. I mean... When you hear those comments there, and you know that this isn't some sort of freakish meeting in the back of a pub. This is a guy that claims to have invented the phrase alt-right. Nobody has disputed his claim to have done that. And he's routinely praised by a website run by Donald Trump's strategy chief, the chief of strategy, one of the most powerful unelected people on the planet, theoretically. And you, like me, expect 90-odd% of the country to be, or 90-odd% of people who can hear that, to be up in arms. And they're not.
Well, I don't expect them to be up in arms for the very simple reason I'm the Chelsea and Fulham Liberal Democrat candidate, and I've been speaking to a lot of constituents who've been what you call kind of hidden far-right ringers who say things like, you know, actually, in the past I voted UKIP. Oh, they're an awful party, I admit, but sometimes you've just got to make a stand. And the message which keeps coming back to me is we're sick of having liberals tell us that because we have our certain point of view, we're either stupid or we're nasty people. Now, I'm not going to comment on the far-right situation in America because that's just terrifying and appalling.
But this is... I recognise what you describe. It's a very well-rehearsed argument. But I suppose I'm happy to sort of stand up and say I might well be one of the people who stands accused of shutting down this argument. But that's kind of proving us right now. This is what happens when you don't shut it down. This is what happens because white supremacism goes mainstream. So all these people who say, oh, you can't talk about immigration without being called a racist. You say, all right, fill your boots, and there's Zeke Hailing in Washington or New York.
Yeah. It's absolutely terrifying. What I would respond to that is that now, more than ever, countries like America and the United Kingdom need to actually stick to the rules that are in place to protect us from this very scary environment. And the idea that we're just going to try and bypass lots of rules and criticise judges and ignore the normal system for appointing ambassadors, etc., is... I
don't think we are, but you know that little grumble will grow and people will be saying, well, why can't Donald Trump decide who he's a big, strong guy, and that's kind of where we are. So the parallel I would draw, if you want something else to worry about, is with the kind of the African potentate or the Middle Eastern dictator, you know, when you find out that they've somehow ended up with $500 million in their current account while allegedly drawing down a salary of $65,000 a year. I think Trump's already said I'm only going to claim $1, but my God, he's going to fill his boots. You know, his daughter was at the meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister.
Now, the US President-elect Donald Trump is holding another day of marathon talks with people who could become part of his new administration. But he's also found time for some business meetings too. Last week, Mr. Trump met developers involved with his Indian real estate interests, while reports claim foreign diplomats are clamouring to stay in his Washington, D.C. hotel in the hope of winning favours. Let's go live now to Jackie Long in Washington. Jackie.
Now, the question of a conflict of interest has dogged Mr. Trump since he first announced he was going to run. He's always argued that it's not an issue, and we saw there his new chief of staff stepping in to say once again this was not going to be a factor. Yet in the last hour or so, an extraordinary story has broken, which suggests that when the Argentinian president, Mauricio Macri, phoned Mr. Trump to congratulate him, Mr. Trump, businessman and president-elect, used the call to ask Mr. Macri if he could help speed up some building permits that Mr. Trump needs if he's to push ahead with a plan to build a major office block in Buenos Aires. Now, in the last few minutes, the president's office in Argentina has said that it denies this story. But this tells you just how potent an issue this is going to be for Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, locked away all weekend at his golf resort in New Jersey, isn't saying much either about another huge challenge, the conflict of interest between his global business empire and his new role.
So we were really happy. I mean,
his first post-victory interview was a family affair. Daughter Ivanka, clearly honoured.
It's incredibly exciting, and we're very grateful for the opportunity.
And in a move straight out of the Trump business Bible, never miss an opportunity, a few days later, Ivanka Trump's jewellery company sent out a fashion alert promoting the $10,000 bracelet she'd been wearing during the interview. The company later issued an apology, saying it was still making adjustments post-election. And yesterday, Mr. Trump's new chief of staff took to the airways to reassure Americans they had nothing to fear.
There is going to be no violation of any of these rules, I can assure you of that. And as we move forward, those matters are going to be more clearly spelled out, and you're going to be aware of it.
The problem is, it doesn't look that way. Mr. Trump's family, inextricably linked to his business life, is now equally tied to his political life too. When Mr. Trump met the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, journalists were kept out. But the official photograph release showed Ivanka Trump and her husband, Jared Kushner, were there for at least some of the time. During the campaign, he said he'd be delighted to hand over his companies to the children.
I don't know if it's a blind trust of Ivanka, Don and Eric run it, but is that a blind trust? I don't know.
Which critics point out would constitute an all-seeing trust rather than a blind one. And here at Trump's newest hotel, a perfect illustration of the strange and uncharted territory his victory has created. It's just a few blocks away from the White House, his new home come January. And just last week, it played host to more than 100 foreign diplomats, looking for somewhere new and convenient to spend the night, or hoping for some insight into the next American president. Rooms for the inauguration have sold out quickly. The line between Donald Trump, the businessman, and Donald Trump, the next president, at the moment at least, not exactly well defined. Mr. Trump made time for a meeting last week with 3 of his Indian business partners. They're building a Trump-branded apartment complex outside Mumbai. It was not a formal meeting, a spokesman said, but a courtesy call by the businessman.
Been a close advisor and will likely continue to be to the president-elect by all accounts. Also in the room, his daughter Ivanka, who has said she will not be involved in the government. The president and his daughter Ivanka have said that she will be running his business going forward.
I want to bring in Joseph Borelli, New York City councilman. He has been a Donald Trump supporter. Angela Rye, CNN political commentator, former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus. She was supportive of Hillary Clinton. And Doug Heye, CNN political commentator, former communications director for the Republican National Committee. Doug Heye, Ivanka Trump in the room when the president-elect meets with the Japanese prime minister. This is his first foreign meeting with a foreign leader as president-elect. Why was she there? What kind of message does this send?
Well, we don't know, and because the press wasn't in the meeting, there was no press pool coverage.
That's a whole other problem.
We haven't learned a lot was in there. If it was exchanging pleasantries and introductions, I think that's totally fine. If they're talking serious policies and moving forward with the relationship, how it affects what we've seen just from the past 8 years in Asia, that presents a problem and presents a lot of questions. One of the things that a lot of people have been troubled by, or at least asking questions about, is what is the vetting process, not just for meetings, but for the phone calls that are coming from foreign leaders, and are they on secured lines and things like that? He's obviously talked to a lot of foreign leaders, which is good, but those need to be on a secure line and also following the protocols that come from the State Department.
I mean, Joseph, there have already been a lot of conflict of interest questions raised because it is not clear where the line will be or how the line will be drawn between Trump, his family, and his business. I mean, that's just one. But then why even have your daughter in the room when that is not clearly that hasn't been cleared up yet.
Well,
I mean, why would you even allow for more questions to be raised?
To Doug's first point, Kellyanne Conway had come on the airways prior to this meeting and said that this meeting is going to be an informal meeting between the Prime Minister and the President-elect. That said, it is unusual in the sense that we have to look back over 20 years to find a president with an adult child. And when we do, we see that Jeb Bush was actually an informal and semi-formal advisor to George Bush, and he has been widely known to have corresponded with his staff. So I don't think it's...
But Donald Trump had been very clear that they were going to run the business. Right. And the reason he had said that is in his view, Donald Trump during the campaign was trying to clear up any questions of conflict of interest. They're going to run my business. They're not going to be involved.
But he also said during the campaign that was widely known that his children are an influence in his life and will have a role in sort of a White House as advisors.
But you can't do both. You can't run the business and be an advisor in the White House, because that creates a huge conflict of interest. And again, we don't know what happened in that room for the reasons that Doug brought up. But it was some type of problem. It was a 90-minute meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan. It could not have just been like, the weather's nice, we both like golf. I mean, at a certain point, policy came up, which I know it did.
And there are two things that he easily could have done to prevent this issue, this appearance of impropriety, which is, one, wait until he's actually the president to start having these conversations, which is what folks have done in the past when elected president. And the second thing he could have done was at least get the briefings from the State Department so that he knows how these conversations go. I think, unfortunately, this is just yet another example of Donald Trump's inexperience causing him to make bad decisions. The inexperience of some of the folks on his transition team causing him to make bad decisions. The fact that his 3 children are on the transition team, I think, yet again, begs the point of his inexperience.
I don't think this is that they didn't expect to be there. So when the president of South Korea calls and wants to talk to the president-elect, they patch the phone through. They patch the call through somehow. The problem is they have to follow the protocols, because talking to one nation in Europe before another may cause a problem. Talking to one nation in Asia before another may cause a problem.
And hiccups happen. I mean, you've seen this in past administrations. I just don't understand why, when you know there are real conflict of interest questions raised, why even allow it to continue in a very important first meeting that everyone's going to want to know about when you sit down for the first time with a foreign leader.
And to that point,
we don't know there's real conflict of interest issues raised, because we don't know the subject of the conversation, and all evidence leading up to it was that this is going to be an informal conversation between the world leader and a future world leader. I mean, we could be grasping at straws to just make inferences.
Remember what Donald Trump said during the campaign? How does Bill Clinton and the current Attorney General, how do they talk about kids in golf for however long they were sitting on that plane?
This was a 90-minute meeting.
And as president-elect, he already is a world leader. As we know, he's already saved the Ford Motor Company jobs. He has a real impact. Of course.
I just want to clarify.
Doug brought that up. Let's actually talk about that, because it's fascinating. Donald Trump tweeted last night he claimed credit for saving these jobs in Kentucky that he didn't save. I mean, Ford was going to change the model they were producing there, but Donald Trump claimed credit for it. There it is. I worked hard with Bill Ford to keep the Lincoln plant in Kentucky. I owed it to the great state of Kentucky for their confidence in me. Joseph Borelli, it's not true.
But no, I mean, if you read the Wall Street Journal today, they come out and say that the Ford company was going to make the escape and expand their operation in the Lexington factory, but they were going to move the Lincoln model, I forget which model it is, to another factory.
So he won the escape for that plant.
So he got the escape, and now the Lincoln MKZ or whatever will still also be made there. That is a small victory. He's not taking credit for the victory per se. He's saying the president of Ford called him to say, we are happy to work with you in a future administration in keeping jobs here. That is a sort of moral victory. I don't think it's specifically related to something he did, but I think it shows the new direction that the president wants to go in to keep jobs in America, and I think it is something to be a little pat on the back for.
But they announced it some time ago, and I think we have to be careful. There's a separate president and CEO, and of course his name escapes me right now, but that's not who he was on the phone with. He was on, I think, on the phone with the chairman. I think the bigger issue here is this is a decision they made some time ago, and he shared this information on his Twitter feed like it was something that resulted from the call. I think it's very, very important, because just how when we had Barack Obama, it was all of a sudden, oh, we're post-racial now. We're post-truth. The president-elect represents post-truth. Whatever he says goes to his 12 million Twitter followers, and that is a huge problem.
Guys, we're also post-time.
She was there. You talk to me about unelected elites, and I've listened. I've been so naive. I've listened. I've believed you. Yeah, you really care about unelected elites, don't you? Okay, well, okay, I'll take that on board, and we'll start being a little more robust in our scrutiny of unelected elites. What's that? He wants to appoint his own ambassadors, and he's taking his daughter to political meetings, and then she does television interviews and releases details of how you can buy the jewellery she was wearing for just shy of $10,000 afterwards. I've got a sneaking suspicion it's not unelected elites that were making you cross, and now they're cheering the white supremacists. Could there possibly be a link between those two phenomena? Apologies if you weren't already aware of this, but if you're white, you are the children of the sun. You're part of a race of conquerors and creators who had been marginalised, but now in the era of President-elect Donald J. Trump, you are awakening to your own identity. Not my words, the words of this chap Richard Spencer, who I have played you and will probably play you again, because 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to tell me very simply why that isn't scary. That's all. That's my only question, okay? So, I mean, to give you an idea of what you would be saying to me if you were enjoying the anonymity or the cover that social media provides, you'd be accusing me, apparently, of whipping up hatred and me of somehow making a bad situation. Or, no, actually, there it is, yeah. You are baiting people. Don't be surprised if they start attacking each other in the street. So you play a video of someone, or you play an audio clip of someone who loves Donald Trump and who essentially believes in white supremacy, and who is feted often by Donald Trump's chief of strategy. These are not fringe figures. These are in the White House. Stephen Bannon, who runs this website that this guy has regularly been praised on. And look, if I'm wrong, correct me, okay? Fact check the bejesus out of me. That's what proper journalists are open to. That's what we do. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay? 0345 6060 973. Because if you're saying shut up, if you're saying sack him, if you're saying take him off air, you're kind of admitting that I'm right. If I'm wrong, show me, tell me, prove it. And I'll tell you what, in the meantime, listen to it again.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory! No one will honor us for losing gracefully. No one mourns the great crimes committed against us. For us, it is conquer or die. The mainstream media, or perhaps we should refer to them in the original German, Lügenpresse. It's not just that they are leftist and cucks. It's not just that many are genuinely stupid. Indeed, one wonders if these people are people at all. Or instead soulless Gollum, animated by some dark power to repeat whatever talking point John Oliver stated the night before. To be white is to be a striver, a crusader, an explorer, and a conqueror. We build, we produce, we go upward. And we recognize the central lie of American race relations. We don't exploit other groups. We don't gain anything from their presence. They need us and not the other way around.
I suppose you shouldn't stoop down to their level, should you? But the fact that he's choked on his words there kind of says it all to me. It's like, I can't quite believe it. It's happening. It's happening. My weird little white supremacist movement is going mainstream. It's true, though. It seems to be. Show me that it isn't. Tell me to stop worrying. Tell me why I should stop worrying. That Donald Trump doesn't really respond to that at all. And these are people praising him, singing his praises. But when his mate goes to the theatre and some of the other audience members boo, he demands an apology. Asif is in Greenwich. Asif, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, James. First of all, I'd like to say don't quit, mate. We need you. And there's never a week that goes by that I don't say to the radio, thank God for James O'Brien. So I'll just say that really quickly.
No, you're very kind, thank you.
But the other thing is, it's the rhetoric as well. I mean, the point I'd make to your researcher is we're almost toning, the media or whoever is also toning down what they're saying in the sense that we're using words like post-truth to kind of almost I don't know what the word is, to kind of placate them, if you like, or just...
Yes, because post-truth means lies. So and I'm guilty of this. You say, oh, it's post-truth politics. You just say it's barefaced lies gone mainstream and unchallenged.
Yeah, barefaced lies. I mean, look at the ambassadorial thing. If Obama, and I know that's what you're alluding to without saying it, if Obama mentioned Brexit and what he thought a few weeks ago, and he was berated for that. And now we're letting this guy get away with saying something like this. It's just ridiculous. And the clip that you just played, I mean, I heard it first time and it frightened me to death. I've heard it again and it's absolutely crucifying me because he's using words like crusader as well. I mean, that I'm a British Muslim. That has connotations, just as it does for our Jewish friends and colleagues and black colleagues and friends. It has connotations for Muslim people as well,
Of course it does. Well, it has connotations for. I mean, John Oliver, who he mentions, is actually white. But I guess you also have to remind yourself at this point you can be the wrong kind of white to white supremacists. Yeah. But I mean, you're obviously not here to calm my fears. How do you account for? Because it can't be the case that everybody listening to this programme who quite like the cut of Donald Trump's jib a month ago now is actually on side with the white supremacists. I can't quite... It's almost a cognitive dissonance that I'm trying to unravel, which is where, all right, that bit's disgusting, but it's not disgusting enough for me to regret my vote, or it's not disgusting enough for me to condemn him.
And that's where, like I say, the rhetoric is changing. We're almost allowing it to happen. And we don't like it, and I'm not saying we as in you and me maybe, or some of your listeners, but it's almost been allowed to happen. It's the fact that we're letting them get away with lies and saying things like post-truth. That's an example of just letting them just chip away at what's acceptable.
But what that works from a bedrock of all politicians being liars, which has sort of gained traction. It's not true, but when you look at, for me, the Iraq War was a huge breach of trust between the electorate and the government, and you look at other examples as well, even little examples like Theresa May saying she's going to put workers on the boards, and then within weeks saying, oh no, we're not going to put workers on the boards. This notion that proper politics looks dishonest because nobody can ever do everything that they want to do. If you're a heckler, if you stay on the fringes, you can look honest because you don't get properly checked and you never have to deliver on your promises. That's when things historically get scary, because Trump now, people are going to be expecting him to deliver. And if he doesn't deliver prosperity, then the only way he keeps those people quiet is by making life a hell of a lot worse for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So no optimism from you then. No cheery, rose-tinted, upbeat analyses from Greenwich today. Asif, thank you.
It's getting darker and darker, maybe.
Well, it is, and then I'm going to treat the box of trolls a little bit differently now, because some people sort of celebrate being in it, a bit like that guy that we've just played the clip of. But the notion that you think people like me shouldn't speak about this, I don't get that. I mean, surely you recognise the job of all proper journalists everywhere is to describe things that are happening. And this is a simple statement of fact, right? He's not giving up his business interests. He's not shutting everything down or putting it in a blind trust, in the same way that he didn't publish his tax returns. That's unprecedented and almost certainly corrupt in some way. Almost certainly. He intends, like African and Middle Eastern dictators, I'm trying to think of a European example, I haven't really got one except the fellow that used to run the Ukraine. He fully intends to use the levers of government to fill his own pockets. He's surrounding himself with people that will let him. He even wants us to send an ambassador that would cheer him along on his programme of self-enrichment rather than criticising it or calling it out. He has 8 new businesses registered in Saudi Arabia since declaring his intention to run for president. He is reported, although this is denied, to have used a congratulatory telephone call with the president of Argentina to ask that they hurry the planning along on his plans to build Trump Tower in Buenos Aires. The second bit is true. It's the content of the telephone call that is disputed. And yet you still have people thinking that he's on their side. And this is how it always happens. The strong man. He even admits to admiring Putin. They're the king of the kleptocrats. And these are not opinions. But they look like opinions now, don't they? This is where impartiality has taken us. These sound like opinions. Oh, James doesn't like Donald Trump. It's nothing personal. I've never met the man. I don't like fascists. I don't like white supremacists. And a lot of fascists and white supremacists think that he's their guy. So even if you don't want to take on the question of what Donald Trump really is, why do people like that? This is the question you have to ask yourself. if you're subscribing to the school of thought that says, oh, it's all a reaction against liberalism, it's not. This is the question you have to ask yourself, okay? Why do white supremacists think he's one of them? It's not a question of is he or isn't he. The simple question here is, why do these people think he's one of them? Why are they talking about their time having come? Why are they talking about a new dawn? What is it about Donald Trump that makes somebody who feels that the colour of your skin is the single most important thing about you? What is it he's done and said? What is it that he represents that make them think he's one of them? Because that's the scary bit, whatever your politics are. Unless, of course, your politics are the politics of white supremacism. 10:45 is the time. Please do something useful, like investigate the full extent of the damage done to Western culture by lefty political correctness. That is a response to a speech by a man who loves Donald Trump and thinks that white people are genetically superior to everybody else, thinks that they are creators and conquerors. So that's where we are now. That's a tweet to the programme. I play you a speech by a Nazi, and you still say, oh, political correctness is responsible for all of this. Political correctness made it unacceptable for you to stand up in public and praise Hitler, to employ words that Hitler employed. Political correctness, or as I prefer to call it, manners for thick people, political correctness made it unacceptable to do these things in public. The point it massively missed was that people were still nursing these ancient hatreds in private. What is it about Donald Trump that has made them think they can come out into the open again? I still subscribe to the faint hope that he's not part of the process himself. I think if you've got enough money, he's your mate, actually. I don't think the colour of your skin matters at all. He's been talking about Saudi Arabians buying his apartments for $50, $60 million, he said. They buy my apartments, they pay $50, $60 million. This is sticking up for the common man, of course. I love these guys, but why do they think he's one of theirs? I think I've done my bit of self-flagellation now. I'm not going to read out any more tweets or texts saying it's all my fault that we've got a white supremacist cheerleading for Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. I want to ask this question, okay? Why do white supremacists love him so much if he is not what many people increasingly fear he might be? That's the question. What is it that they're missing? Don't talk to me, talk to them. Talk to the guy doing the Hitler salutes in that room in Washington, D.C. and say, no, you've got it all wrong. Trump's not a white supremacist. I can prove it to you. Go try that. I don't think you'll take up the challenge. I don't think you can. I don't think anyone can. I can't. Sam's in Twickenham. Sam, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello,
yeah, first of all, echoing what Asif said, keep it up. I do enjoy it. And it's useful, and we need to hear this. And he's the establishment now. You know, everyone's saying it's anti-establishment, Trump being in. He is the establishment. He always has been, and now he's president. So we need journalists on his back. As for what, well, I should be the target audience, really. I'm a young white man, so I should feel...
Are you a creator and a conqueror, Sam?
No, although having done history at university, I learned all about them, and it means they usually need the people that they seem to hate so much to help them conquer and corrupt and generally make the world a worse place. So, no, I'm not a conqueror, fortunately enough.
Do you see the appeal? I mean, what sort of person would you need to be to find that rhetoric attractive?
I think it's people
apart from a white person, obviously.
Yeah, I think that helps in white supremacist groups. I don't know. I mean, it's something that's been there for a very long time in America. He was endorsed by the KKK leader on his way to the White House, so it's not.
Yes, this is the point. In the interest of balance, that I point out that Hillary Clinton also had support from somebody who used to be involved in the KKK. The difference is that he disavowed and disowned his past and expressed shame and disgust at it, whereas the man that endorsed Donald Trump still fully subscribes. David Duke still fully subscribes to the ideology of the KKK. But I mention that because that is balance, right? So what's not balance, what's post-truth, and it's important, or what's inconsistent, it's important to redraw the map on this. You say he was endorsed by David Duke. My timeline fills up with people quoting all these far-right websites saying, yes, but Hillary Clinton, she was endorsed by this guy. I Google that guy. Turns out he was in the KKK and has never stopped apologising or expressing shame at the path he went down to end up in it. And yet they still see that as a cancelling out. So Donald Trump, it doesn't matter that he was endorsed by the KKK because Hillary Clinton was endorsed by someone who absolutely despises the KKK but was once in it.
Well, it's just circular arguments.
Yes.
Basically. But and it's what helps fuel these things. It is a sort of, I'm not going to say ignorance, because that has annoyed a lot of people. Is, these people are just ignorant. And
well, then we're doing it both again in the interest of balance. Your man in New York there just said we were all thick. We're all not very bright, because he knows a German word.
Yeah, well, I think he's been testing his German. I think some of these people. Yeah, I'm going to say it. Some of them are stupid. It is fairly stupid to think that white people are, in any way superior to any other race. That is a stupid thing to believe. But there's a reason that people believe it, and it's not the fault of lefties and liberals. Globalization has moved past these people, and they want to pin it on someone else. That's what helps raise racism in every era. Is the fact that people are moved on, and you need someone to pin it on, and don't pin it on the rich elite guy who's running for us. The rich white man, pin it on the poor people who are trying to come to this country and make a better life for themselves.
I'll ask you this question, albeit that you're not part of the constituency that needs to answer it. Why do you think supporters of white supremacy think Trump is one of them?
Because a lot of supporters of Trump say he is.
So, but that's a circular argument. What's he done that gives them succour? What's he done that gives them the confidence to say that there is a white supremacist in the White House? One of our guys is there. We're back.
It depends. So if you start with, if we're talking about the media, a lot of the right-wing media in America has supported Trump for a lot of this and have just talked about him constantly in Fox News. And I think it's sort of like... It's like a trickle-down effect in a way. So you have, Fox News starts to talk about him, he's nice like that. Then you have the sort of right-wing journalists, like the right-wing journalist organization who's now in the White House with Trump, which is equally worrying. And they will start to sort of say, well, because he supports these things, that means he also supports this. And it just starts to add and add. So by the time that you get filtered down post-truth news, if we're going to call it that gets to people, it's Trump wants all Mexicans out, all gone, these are actual laws we can carry out, and he's speaking for us. And so I think it's just sort of, it's gradually going down and down the pyramid of hate. I'm going to call it the pyramid of hate.
The pyramid of hate. And that does trickle down in a way that money, which the same people sitting at the top of that pyramid tell us money trickles down. It doesn't. 10:57 is the time. 0345 60 60 973. James, this is all very depressing. I don't see the point of all this talking anymore. You're depressing those of us who know how bad things are, and the people you're trying to convince are simply too stupid to understand. Your radio show for Brexiteers and Trump voters, I don't like that conflation, Sean, but you've written it, so I've read it out. It's like trying to teach maths to a lizard. What is the point? Well, the point is the texts like this that says all those years debating UKIP callers, so someone else who's conflating Brexit with Trump, like shooting fish in a barrel. This is all part of the huge anger that the Liberal PIP squad, I don't know what that means, has inculcated. You talked over them all and used your power in a malicious manner. I didn't. That's the thing. People rang up, made fools of themselves, and went away even angrier than they were when they arrived. And if I ask why, what is it I missed? What is it that wasn't explicit, that wasn't explained? It's the white supremacism. It just is. You don't get it. I want my skin colour to... I do get it. Give me something else. 0345 60 60 973. Give me something else. If it isn't all about skin colour, and I'll tell you what the biggest issue is here, which oddly isn't getting talked about much, the Muslim issue here. That is huge. You go on, if I click on the accounts of people who are suggesting that warning against the rise of neo-fascism is responsible for the rise of neo-fascism, I hesitate to use the word thick, but that's an astonishing worldview to have arrived at. Why is all this happening? Oh, it's because of people like you warning that it might. Okay, you created this anger, says that text. Really? By warning that this was bad and happening, I've made it happen? That's incredible. I'm going to win the lottery on Saturday. I'm just warning you now. Okay, I'm just warning you now, I'm going to win the lottery on Saturday. So sit back. Must remember to buy a ticket. But it's obviously nonsense. By warning about something happening, you've actually made it happen. This is the rhetoric now of the right, who are terrified at what they've unleashed. The middle-class right-wing columnists who are so invested now they can't reverse. The middle-class right-wing commentators who are much more responsible for all of this. You think this guy Milo Yiannopoulos, You think he's a sort of horny-handed son of the soil who's worked his way up from a blue-collar background? He's as posh and middle-class as Farage is.
What does it say about you, though? What does it say about Steve Bannon, who's now chief strategist, that you don't care about offending disabled people, ethnic minorities, women? You don't care about that.
I don't care
he
about
doesn't care
taking.
about that.
I care about facts. I don't care about your feelings.
I thought you believed in a post-fact universe.
So who?
That's one of your quotes.
Is it?
We live in a post-fact era. It's wonderful, you said.
Yes.
These people do not speak for ordinary working people. These people achieve wealth and fame on the backs of ordinary working people. And Donald Trump's about to make $1 billion off the backs of ordinary working people. And what's he going to chuck to them when they start getting angry or they start noticing? He'll do what Putin does. He'll chuck in a bête noire. He'll chuck in a scapegoat. He'll chuck in a target they can all growl at while he gets on with the business of flogging apartments in Trump Tower in Jeddah or Buenos Aires or wherever the hell else he's going to build one next.